all going to go to hell at some point. Just roll with it. You don't have to. That's for anyone calling in, any of the units. Don't we know what's happening. It's all bad. Everything's fine here. It's all fine.
Yes, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're fine.
Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of 911 Delta Tethered for Life podcast. As usual, this episode may not be suitable for all listeners due to language and content, so listen with care and stay safe out there. Hey y'all, we're back with another episode of 911 Delta. This week we've got Matt on, who's a former co-worker of ours, and Lorri is stepping in for Kacey this week. So we're just going to do a whole lot of reminiscing and give some advice on how to deal with the workplace environment, and for any of you aspiring dispatchers, what you should know before you get into it. So grab your headsets and let's go.
Well, Matt, welcome.
Thank you. I guess I'll take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Matt. I was no longer in public service, but I was with Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office in Virginia. Technically Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office, but we handled Sheriff's Office and fire for nearly 5 years. My very first day, I got into the center and said the Q word twice. Lorri had to almost throw a stapler at my head.
I did threaten to do that.
I can't believe you made it then.
I know, yeah. Went through the classroom training portion just fine, but as soon as I got into the center, said the Q word twice, like almost back to back, almost got a stapler thrown at my head, but still managed to make it almost 5 years. Handled call taking, NCIC, patrol, and fire dispatch before moving on to different opportunities to try to help the family. But yeah, I had Lorri as my supervisor for a little bit. De facto trainer, some other good folks helped me along the way. But yeah, it was quite a wild ride, just to say the least.
What made you decide to begin that wild ride?
What made me decide that was just completely an accident. Just looking for a new job. Of all things, I happened onto our county's website, looking at what jobs were posted at the time. Had no idea what a communications operator was. Kind of read the description, kind of got a bit of an idea. Had no idea it was, answering 911 calls, non-emergency calls to start with before moving on to dispatching.
Was it what you thought it was going to be when you read the description?
I had no idea what it was going to be. I didn't know if it would just be, sitting in, well, as we like to joke, cornfield in Iowa, but I didn't know if it was going to be sitting in the cornfield in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, answering phones, helping, utilities or whatever with the county. But I'm like, whatever, I'll put in the application. Process went along, interviews, all that. That's when I was called in for the observation process, where they bring you into the 911 center and you sit for about 6 hours. I'm like, oh, this is really what it's about. Continued with the process, and I don't know what didn't make me run from the hills from there, but and if you hear any yelling in the background, it's getting close to my little one's bedtime, and they're getting feisty, and today was the first day for them. But yeah,
I'm not tired.
No,
but if I stop screaming, I'll fall asleep.
Yeah, 5 more minutes, please.
Please. That's so funny.
The county job listing just posted as communications operator or officer. It didn't necessarily say 911 center, sheriff's office, PSAP, anything like that. So I put in the application not knowing what it was, and I had no prior experience from a previous agency. Came in completely green. That's why I said the Q word twice on that first day, Lorri. And
excuses.
Yep. But yeah, that's how the whole process began, kind of completely by accident. Not sort of seeking it out, but just, okay, so this is working in a 911 dispatch center. Let's go to it. And I kind of took to it.
He did. Cool. Matt was one of those superstars that you tell him something once, and 99% of the time he had it. He knew what he was doing, and you didn't have to repeat yourself. So cool. Bryant says, can I release him? It's like, you can't train him for a day. You have to go a little further than that, 2 days at least.
Bryant was my first official trainer, my first CTO, and he was as great as he was. There were those moments I'd look over to him during a call. Doesn't matter if it was something as simple as legal advice or the craziest 911 call. What do I ask next? What do I ask? And he'd eventually say, "You know what you need to ask. Just don't look it over at me. Like, basically, stop using me as a crutch.
Right. Stop asking.
I'll push you out of the way, but you know what you're doing."
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. I know that's a later question, but while I'm thinking of it, anyone interested in doing this, trust your instincts. I mean, you'll have the support there. If you're totally screwing it up, someone will shove you out of your way. But trust your instincts.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
I think everybody's been shoved out of the way at least once.
Yeah, you can lean on your trainer until the cows come home, but you've got to eventually be able to be like, I'm doing. You can ask for the help, sure, but if you know what you're doing, if your gut's telling you to ask this or tell them this, do it.
Yeah, it really is common sense. Even if we do have EMD and all that stuff now.
Common sense is the biggest thing. Yeah, if you can lean on that, it'll take you far.
Can you share a memorable experience that had a significant impact on you?
And
it doesn't have to be a call, right? It could be like something that happened on shift or whatever.
I mean, if we're just talking about on shift, I would have to say one of my biggest things was always, I was so serious, so no nonsense. When we had to work those Sundays, I was never the one who wanted to suggest we do Chick-fil-A for lunch, especially to one of my former supervisors, just so we can bother the rest of the crew.
Poor Becca. I want a chicken sandwich, and I want this, and I want that.
Yeah. Along with suggesting Chick-fil-A for lunch, I do remember that one day of someone suggesting, let's order Mexican and do margaritas while on shift, and having to be like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, but that's too bad.
Makes the day go by fast.
Right.
Like a call. And Lorri, you were there for me when I was still very green. I think not released all that long, but handling a suicide of a juvenile. I think it was 4th of July. This one will always stick with me. And the parents, I think the mom letting the dogs out and finding their son deceased on the back deck. Ugh. And that will always just stick with me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the first time handling an incident like that. And I'm sure anyone in this field probably can remember the first time dealing with something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the parents and kind of just putting yourselves in their shoes of what they're looking at and trying to process what they're dealing with. So, yeah, I mean, it can go from, normal day, joking with, let's get Chick-fil-A on a Sunday to something like that. So those are the kind of moments that both resonate.
Right. In a heartbeat, it can go right.
Oh, yeah.
To that.
You can be joking about this, that, and the other 1 minute into something like that the next.
Yeah, I used to tell people we'd have 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds of boredom and 30 seconds of terror.
Right.
Yep.
True story. Did you work nights too, Matt, for a while?
Yeah, I think for about 8 or 9 months I did. From I think 2019 to into 2020, something like that.
Gotcha.
So not quite a year, but a good chunk of it.
Yeah, that was always when I was, even when I wasn't full-time, when I was part-time, everybody knew, like, if I was working, there was going to be a dinner decision made probably before 7:30, because I'm not messing with you fools. Because at night, if you don't decide what you want to eat, you run out of options real quick.
Yeah, unless we're talking a Sheetz or a Wawa or a Fast Mart, everything's closing shop like at the start of the shift.
Right. So, and depending on how many people you have, you may or may not be able to run out. So, y'all need to get it together. That eating thing.
Although that was the one thing I was thankful for on nights with like Wawa or something. Those 2 a.m., 3 a.m., if they don't do anything that night, being able to just run down the road and I'll get drinks for everyone and food for everyone. Those places that stayed open all day and all night.
So Matt, you were cross-trained, right?
Yep, I handled a little bit of everything: call taking, NCIC VSIN, patrol, fire. Definitely, fire is my one true love. But yeah, I could do the.
I thought it was three of us on here. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's three of us on here that could say that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, we should. We could have our own fire dispatch service.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, I think the three of us handle it no problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, before we all jumped online here, Lorri, we were texting. I can handle the biggest, baddest fire incident because most of our guys, for the most part, I'll qualify it, could follow ICS and who's in command. Deputies were just so needy. Can you run this? Can you run that? I'm like, don't you have a computer in your car? Can't you do this yourself? I mean, fire incident, I'm sitting there just typing notes in on what they're saying. I really didn't have to talk to them except for bar checks.
Right.
Right. And then those deputies, they just want to talk randomly.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Spotsylvania, I know you're busy, but.
What? Stop talking.
Is
anybody talking to you?
Yeah,
Why are you speaking?
I just put in my notes deal. Could you run that?
Yeah.
No. No, run it yourself.
Yeah.
Spotsylvania, you're busy, but is it mostly sunny or partly cloudy today?
Right. Right. Right.
When we had the earthquake, the deputies all marked up. It was dead silent for about 2 minutes. And then the deputies all marked up and started to tell us, well, the ground is shaking in Thornburg. It's shaking on Route 3. It's shaking here, shaking there. And the first sergeant had to say, stop telling them that. They don't care.
Right. Meanwhile, while you're outside and the ground is shaking,
right,
there's shit falling from the ceiling. Okay. Because I worked, I didn't work in Spotsy then, but I worked in the basement too. Yeah, and there's like shit falling from the ceiling in these old buildings. You don't know. Like, I don't think they were made to be earthquake proof.
Well, the old center, the only thing that fell was dust. And there was a lot of that.
Well, I know. I mean, and same thing in Orange, right? Like it was just a lot of drywall dust and maybe some concrete dust. I don't know, but it's freaking you out when you're.
I was sitting under the TV when that happened.
Oh God, not that giant TV.
Yes, it was swinging, and I moved in a hurry.
Yeah, I would have too.
I went over and stood next to Mike. Hi, Mike. How you doing? You know.
Did you join him in Africa?
No, he was the fire rescue dispatcher for the day. I was training somebody, and I said, I'm going to move. He said, why? And I pointed at the TV. Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's a big reason why I preferred. It's getting to the end of the day. I can't talk, but preferred fire rescue dispatch over the patrol. I mean, something like that. It's shaking over here. It's shaking. Yes, I know. I felt it.
Right.
I can imagine. I wasn't working, public safety that day, but I'm sure you didn't have every firefighter and EMT and paramedic in the county keying up to tell you that, hey, the ground shook.
Not a word.
Oh, the ground shook. Right. Right.
Yeah. They didn't say a word.
But
same thing when we had that we had the derecho, and first sergeant was just like, y'all hunker down, do not do anything, stay off the radio. Like, there's nothing you're going to do right now. You can't see 5 feet in front of your face. You're not driving anywhere. Meanwhile, poor fire's trying to drive to shit that's really on fire. And, you're blah, 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 blah. It's raining hard out here. No shit.
That was such a mess.
Oh,
it was a hot mess. I mean, that's the only time that I've ever had a weather incident come in that quickly and like with zero warning. Just bam.
We knew it was coming. We were watching it.
I think we were watching the channel on and just watching that line on the radar, like, we're not getting out of here. We're not getting out of here. We're not getting. And it power went out the center, air conditioning went off.
Right. Well, that was the second one. The first one was you weren't working yet,
No,
Matt. It was right after we moved. The weather report was just like scattered thunderstorms, the typical summer in Virginia, right? And then all of a sudden we started getting calls from Winchester. Like people are, I mean, they're like frantic, like this, that, and they're talking about places we don't know about. And we're like, what? Where are you? And it's like, oh, we're in Winchester, Virginia. Like what? Hold on. And then we're trying. We can't get through to Winchester. Their phones are just blown up apparently. And I was like, let me check the weather. And I remember I was like swiped up on the weather app, and that was all she wrote. Like I was like, oh, it's red, duh. And the phones just blew up again, and we got hit. And I was like, and we're only 4 of us working that night, so it was super fun. But yeah, and still the deputies. What are you? Shut up! It's raining and thundering and lightning, and yes, alarms are getting struck. Building alarms are going off everywhere. There's nothing to do about it. Like just let it go. Let it go, Elsa. Let it go. But and I don't remember who the first sergeant was that night. But he was finally like, I think it might have been Ray, it might have been Pittman, and he was like, "Y'all, just enough. Like, hunker down. Wait till it stops.
There's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do."
Ray was definitely one of my favorites. But yeah, I mean, anyone listening to weather, take that into account. Weather's going to happen. It's all going to go to hell at some point. Just roll with it. You don't have to. That's for anyone calling in, any of the units. Don't we know what's happening. It's all bad. Everything's fine here. It's all fine.
Yes, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're fine.
Yes, we know a big storm hit, power's out, so all the alarms are going off, burglary and fire alarms.
Right.
We're sending everyone and their mother to it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Lorri may have heard this story, but did you have, I don't know if Matt had ever heard it, where the when the server caught on fire in the old building?
Is that
burned up
the
old CAD?
C-Plems burned up?
Yeah.
That was like way up itself out. It's one final.
Yeah.
And we were down there and we're like, man, something smells like it's on fire. And I don't remember, like, because, you know, back then it was more combination career volunteer. And I feel like Company 1 was out on a call. And I think we had 10, which at the time was career staff, come in. And they're like, nope, it's all good. Everything's good. Whatever. Rolled out. A little while later, we're like, I don't know. And so Company 1 was coming back, and they come in and they're like, oh, and I was dispatching fire that night. And they come in and they're like, oh, yeah, the server's like super duper hot. Like, it's probably burning up. And then, don't you know, an actual residential structure fire came in.
Of course.
And I dropped those tones, and they ran out of there so fast.
It's probably made a new door.
Right.
Of course they did.
And we're like, hold on.
We got us a little fire back here.
It's on fire. And so we were just like, close the door and hope that contains it.
And we had one door to get out of that room.
Right. So we shut the server door, which I'm sure made it even hotter, right? But at least it contained anything that was in there. And yeah, it burned itself out. But yeah, then C-Flames didn't work after that. The old days were so much more fun, I feel like.
Sounds like fun. That's the one thing. I started training right about the time I started training on fire is when we got rid of the tone board, which I missed out on. And one of my biggest regrets is not being able to light up the tones. Having it so automated. I mean, like, it was convenient enough, but I missed out on a big chunk of it.
Until you had one of those where you got to the end and then realized you'd left out somebody in the middle. And you were like...
Oh, and they'd scream and yell if you told them out of order too.
Right, and if you put them at the end, they'd be like, me.
We're supposed to be first too.
Look, bitch, you're lucky your tones got hit. Like,
I'll never forget
I mean, even
When my first supervisor went out on bed rest because she was pregnant, so she goes out on bed rest, and so that left, I think, three of us on the shift. Uh, uh, Me and Jenny Withers, who was not released on fire, me who wasn't released on patrol, and an unreleased call taker.
Fun.
Yeah. So sometimes we'd have somebody come in, but not often. So, Jenny would have to get up and go to the bathroom. So I've got fire, literally, I'd have a headset on with fire in this ear, and, the other headset on with patrol. And I just prayed nobody said anything. I'm sure you remember those days.
Oh,
You?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so Jenny came back in and she sat down. And just as she sat down, I could hear people screaming on her radio. Company 3 was on fire. There was an electrician there. They had told us to disregard all alarms. They were working on something. So the guy set the attic on fire in Company 3. I mean, if you've ever been to 3, Matt, it looks like if you leaned on the building, it would fall over.
yes.
So
My fire ride along, I think that was one of our first stops to that wonderful station.
So Jenny looks at me, it's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it, And so she tones out. No, she didn't tone Company 3 because she did ask them, where's your apparatus? Well, it's still in the building. So they couldn't get to their apparatus. So she did not tone them. She got written up because she did not tone them, even though they couldn't pull their apparatus out because everything was on fire.
Oh my gosh.
So I laugh
What do
every
you mean
time
you could
Yeah, it had shut down the doors or something. They couldn't open doors to get the pumper and the tanker out. So uh, she didn't tone them.
So now the fire trucks are stuck in the building that's on fire.
Right.
That sounds like somebody forgot
something.
something.
Yeah, so she got written up for that, and I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. She was mad as a hornet. But yeah, the old days were, in many ways, more interesting.
Well,
Yes.
when I was still there, before they had switched over to the GPS in every truck and first dues don't matter. I think I was on night shift. Remember in toning something where we needed at least 2 pumpers. It was right on the verge of, I think it was 4's first due and 11's first due, and I called them out of order, gave them all the info, I was like, ladder 11, do you copy? And engine 4 pipes up, all indignant. Engine 4 copies were responding. I'm sorry, guys. I got the boundary lines a little screwed up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I didn't mean to exclude you guys. I just had kind of gotten a little blurred there. It's also like 2 a.m. I'm a little sleepy.
Right. Right. You'll be okay.
Sorry about that.
You're still going. You're still important too.
Yeah, they would get all upset if you tone them out of order. Yeah, Company 3 called in. Somebody called in from their cell and wanted to know why they hadn't been toned. And I heard Jenny trying to explain to it. And we're going to call our chief. Well, okay. I mean, she was busy at times. She had time to listen to them. But yeah. So, Matt, what made you leave us?
Several reasons. Biggest thing was to have regular hours, a Monday to Friday, better pay, something the county would never offer. But, and I don't want to burn any bridges here, but we all know some of the stuff going on. I mean, even the most immaculately run agency is going to have the stress just from the nature of the job. But just dealing with some of the other behind the scenes stuff with some folks, I was like, no, I've had enough of that. But yeah, it was just to be able to have the Monday to Friday, be able to get my kid on the bus, off the bus, have the weekends free to do stuff. I think that those were some of the biggest things.
I know when transportation started parking buses all over the county, and they were starting at, what was it, $21 an hour? I think they're up to 22. They're at 22 now. And everybody was yelling about that. Everybody that had started within 4 or 5 years was yelling about that because they were making more money.
Mhm.
That was one
Yeah.
of my points. I don't know. Maybe when I left, I was maybe making that hourly and basically getting dismissed that, oh, well, the bus drivers only work 3 or 4 hours a day or something to that effect. I'm like, oh, okay. And I think another frustrating thing was I understand the need to recruit people. I understand wanting to incentivize with the hiring bonuses of however much they're offering now. But I just kept thinking, what about the retention bonuses for the people who are sticking around?
Yeah, that was another big point.
And it so amazes me that I don't know what everybody was getting paid, but I know what a few of us were getting paid. And there was a huge, huge discrepancies between people. And I just don't understand why it was like that. For sure, like myself, I came in from another agency. I had experience. I didn't have law enforcement experience though. I made a pretty good deal when I came in and got my raises and all of that. But then there were people coming in when I was going out. Like Matt, that was my hourly rate when I went out as a full
Yeah.
timer. And that was before you even started, I think. I think I had gone part time when you started.
I think, about the
Yeah,
time
I think you had.
probably part
So
time.
like you should have been, and then I was able to bargain for, a little bit more as a part timer. But you just because you came in, we've already had inflation. Like there's already like you should have come in not making less money. And then I know some of the people who came in as call takers. Did you come in as just a call taker to start with?
Oh yeah, I came in as a call taker, no prior experience, so I would have been perfectly fine to accept making less than folks who had any
Right.
experience.
But here's my thing. It's one thing to come in making less money, right? But once you've been completely released, once you are on par with everybody else, you should be making the same amount of money.
Yep.
Well, except for your step.
Except for years of service, people, right? But as far as if you got a brand new dispatcher coming in, like say they hire somebody from, a neighboring jurisdiction, your tenured freaking people should not be getting screwed. And I know it's a problem everywhere. I know it's not just that agency. I know it's a problem in every agency in public safety everywhere across, the country. But, to not address it and then I guess to be dismissive to you about it, as that's a serious concern for people who have families and,
Yeah, and do you remember when I was training Becca and Nikki? They were making $1 less an hour than I was. And I had been there
crazy
8 or 9 years because we went, well, maybe you weren't here, but we went for several years, almost 10 years with no anything, no cola, no nothing, and so everything got compressed. And then when we got
and I came in, I think, at the tail end of that.
Yeah. And then we had that pay survey and it opened up. But
You talking about the pay survey? I think I may have been there a year, maybe a little more, when they made that big announcement.
Yeah, and I know I had a couple of people come to me and say, well, I only got a quarter. And I said, you've been here for 12, 13 months.
Right.
Like, but
12
people
days.
the people that have been here for 10 or 20 years did get a big raise. Because I got a
Right.
$10 an hour raise, you know.
Right.
But, you know, and then, as you said, as they've been hiring people and they've been desperate, and some people are getting deals, you
Right.
know, that's not fair. And, you know, in theory, I guess they think nobody talks, but everybody talks,
Right. Everybody talks. And
especially in dispatch.
right.
Probably the way it should be in any job too is discuss it with everyone and see if anyone's getting screwed versus someone's getting a plum deal. And
Yeah.
Right.
And if you are,
And,
why?
right.
Yeah.
And there's plenty, I mean, you know, a lot of places that do like the step and grade and things like that. I mean, it's just posted on their website, like this is what you make, kind of like the government, you know.
Right.
And I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? It's and of course, it's never just about the money. Like we've discussed that multiple times on the show. Like that's not even the biggest reason that people leave a place, right? I mean, that's always a concern, but it's never the main reason. And so the biggest problem is just retention, personal retention. I get the theory of if you don't like it here, go somewhere else, but when your turnover rate starts to overrun the number of actual employees you have, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, you have to look at it a different way. And like Matt said, I mean, you're already dealing with stress, and we talked about this with Dr. Meredith, right? Then to have to deal with the stress of the job and the things that you're dealing with, and then burnout because your employer doesn't give a shit.
You know, and that's that's one of the things that used to bug me. And I don't know if it ever occurred to anybody else, but every study of every class on stress they made us take, which stressed me out, but didn't it? You know, but
Oh yeah.
every class says you need a minimum of 3 days to recover from the stress, right? 3 days.
Mhm.
What happened at least once every 3 day weekend? You're on call. And
you need to sign up for at least 6 hours overtime. Come in.
Right.
Work
right,
half.
right. And you know, that isn't as stressful to me as on call. And I could never get it through to them how stressful that is. You know, well, can I go to this ball game or not?
Right.
Well, you
Right.
know, I don't know. Well, you know, so and so always has a headache on the third Tuesday of the fourth month of even years, you know, or whatever. But it there's nothing done to relieve the stress. Nothing. Then you've got favoritism that jumps in there. And I think part of the problem is that when things are set up in a dispatch center, it's never set up by the people that work there. It's set up by people that work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, you know, or whatever.
Right.
It's not set up for the people that are there at 3 a.m.
Right. Well, and the people that are now working 9 to 5 quickly forget what it's like to work
Mm-hmm.
nights or
Yeah.
12-hour shifts, period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that amazes me. And you know, it's like, how do you forget what it's like? And you know, I mean, I worked primarily nights, so I mean, you never see anybody.
Right.
You kind of don't know who's working where,
I mean, my short time
whatever.
is that's when you get the time when people want to text you like, "Hey, what's going on? I just got off shift 3 hours ago. I'm dead asleep to the world."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me, even more than the money thing, I know it's never a field we're going to get rich. I don't care what center you're in, whether you're law enforcement, dispatch, fire, EMS, you're never going to make a killing in it. It was kind of going back to what Lori said, the stress of, and I could even take, if I signed up for 12 hours of overtime on this day, okay, I'm committed. I know I'm working that. It was those on call days. Are they going to be texting me in the middle of my day saying I need to come in, or can you call in because we've already got the on-call person in here, but we need more, and can I go, having to figure out, can I go do this activity but break myself away or be, within an hour's arm's reach of the agency? That stressed me out, I think, more than the money is, to the point eventually where I'm like, should I even just turn my phone off and just,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't get your message. I didn't get your call. I'm sorry.
Oops. Right. I totally believe in that. I used to do that. Like, and when I worked full time, we didn't have on call. When I worked in Orange, we did, but it was set up. We did like a rotating 1 week, so you were on call, like for when you work night shift, like the nights of that week for your short week.
All right, guys, I'm gonna have to jump up a little early here.
That's okay. I'll see you Friday.
Yep, I will see you Friday. Anna, it was good to talk to you again.
Me too. All right.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
See ya. We had this rotating on call. It was a week. And yes, depending on the humans involved, you knew that you might get called in. But it was less stressful because it wasn't meshed in with days that you already worked, and we didn't have mandatory overtime. So I think if we have mandatory overtime and on call, like, that's bullshit. I'm sorry.
You bullshit. End up working almost every day.
The 9-to-5ers don't think about how things run in the center on shift. So there's that giant disconnect. And then that leads to everybody being stressed out, everybody being, and obviously when you're on call, and one of the things that burned me when I went to part-time, I used to always, I would tell the supervisors, like, hey, I am available this weekend. If you guys need on call, somebody calls out, let me know. Oh, we can't do that because we have to call in the on call. That's what the lieutenant says, or the major, or whoever the F. Well, that's the stupidest shit I have ever heard. I don't care if you're paying them $3 to be on call. You're still going to save money by calling in a part-timer.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to burn your people out.
Right.
That is the most asinine thing. Oh, I have to call you in. I can't call a part-timer and see if they're available to work. It's bullshit.
It's like those people that will sign up for all the overtime. And then they're on day 14. I'm so tired. I'm on day 14.
Right.
Nobody held a gun to your head and
Right.
made you do that. You're doing this to yourself. And you might think, well, I'm doing the center a favor, or I'm doing this, or my check's going to be huge. No, it's not, because taxes are going to eat it. But what are you doing to yourself? You're burning yourself out twice as fast. It's not worth it. Like I used to tell the center manager, it was here before you got here. It'll be here when you leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you have to take care of yourself because nobody in the center is going to take care of you.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
The only thing they're going to say is, can you work tonight? Can you work tomorrow? Can you work fill in the blank?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
nobody sees that, and nobody stops and thinks, oh, well, that's why everybody's leaving, because they're tired. They're exhausted. And just listening to previous podcasts, the one thing that is not offered where Matt used to work is any type of mental help.
Well, hold on now. You have the peer support team. What are you talking about?
Nobody's going to talk to a group of people that they know. When Deputy Writing Stud, they brought in a group of people, about 8 or 10 of them, and put them in. Remember that little EOC we had
I do remember
But
that.
they put us in there. They had done away with the table, and we're all sitting there in this giant oval. Nobody's talking. Nobody's talking because we knew everybody in the room.
Right.
You know, we need like a Dr. Meredith to, somebody that's not part of the agency that we could reach out to. And I
Right.
remember saying to my shift one time, I didn't say, they said to me, I don't remember what happened, but I was senior and everybody was telling me, we want to talk to somebody, we want to talk to somebody. So I told the supervisor, and the supervisor says, nah, you don't need it. You guys will be fine. And I went back with that, and that didn't go over well, but, um, but of course, I don't think they even have that for the deputies. I mean, I'm not sure about fire rescue. I've never heard fire rescue having it unless they need it after a big incident or something.
Well, see, now fire rescue, they have like statewide teams that come in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, other than that peer support, I mean, I guess you can always go through employee assistance. When we talked to you, Michael Segru, he said the same thing, right? Like after that incident, nobody's talking. One, because nobody wants to, like, you don't know these people like that.
Right.
And then you also don't know what you can and cannot talk about in terms of a law enforcement incident like that. So you need somebody. And maybe, I mean, I remember him saying, like, at the time he was the sergeant, right? So could he have facilitated more conversation by just being open and honest about how he felt about it? But he didn't know if he could do that because nobody had trained him on how to do that. I really think that yes, and I know Mark said in Fairfax that they do have that. In the station, they can walk in and talk to their own doc, whatever. In our smaller localities, we don't have that, honestly, because we know the people who are on these teams, and God love them. Thank them for doing that. Like, I don't want to bash anybody. Like, are you trained enough that you can actually recognize when people are struggling and they need your help
Or you
without them
can,
having to tell you that they do?
right. Or
And
you can recognize they're struggling and say, you need somebody that has a PhD.
right. Like, are you that? And can you facilitate? Because I remember always, anything that was put out was always like, come talk to us anytime. Feel free to come talk to us. But sometimes people have a hard time initiating, right? And they need somebody to initiate. And
Right.
I remember 2 people on that team who would do that on occasion. Okay, maybe a third one, but that one's motives I always question. So I'm not, I can't say that they
No,
were
I
pure.
understand. I understand.
You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yep.
But again, that's part of the problem, right? I think we need to be training each other because just like you said, those stress classes that you went to did nothing but stress you out.
Right.
They didn't teach you that, hey, if your partner is doing XYZ, oh yeah, if they're drinking too much, promiscuity, they're having nightmares. Well, look, I'm with this fool for 12 hours a day. I probably am not with them for the other 12. So we don't know. We need to know how to recognize it in at work. Like, okay. And then you also need to have a culture of where that is important. And as they would say in London, taking the piss out of people is less important. So making
Right.
fun of them and making people feel like an ass is maybe not the way to handle it. We all have our sarcastic moments, our
Absolutely.
judgy moments, but there's a time and a place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody's struggling, that's definitely not the time and place.
Right. Right.
I think we've lost a couple of people because of the just the nature of the job, because of the things they've heard. You can't unhear those things, you know. You know as well as I do.
And I always think, kind of like Matt said earlier with that particular suicide, like for sure that's not the only one he worked.
No, not at all.
Why does that one stick with you?
Right.
Right. Same thing.
Is it because it's your first one, or is it because of something else? Yeah.
Say I'm one that sticks out to me, and there was I mean, I guess like his situation is nothing. It was one of those situations you can't even do it. I don't even know how many people I talked to on the phone that were suicidal, and you talk to them for like a half hour waiting on somebody to get there, you know?
Right.
Those I have no recollection of whatsoever. None.
I don't either. I had somebody, I think I had a ride along sitting with me a few months ago, and I answered the phone, and she said, "I think my husband's dead."
Mm.
I said, "Okay, why do you think that? What's your address? Why do you think that?" Well, and she launches into her story, and I said, "Okay, would you like to attempt CPR?" She said, "No, he's cold, he's stiff, he was gone, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And is there anybody I can call for you? No, I've already called whoever she called, and just the whole call was like, "I want a report of
Right.
vandalism to my mailbox,"
Right. Right.
And I got off the phone, and the ride along looked at me like I had hit her in the face with a baseball bat. She said, "Why was she so calm?" I said, "She's in shock. It hasn't hit her yet."
Right.
And
Right.
I said, "It might be an hour, it might be a day, it might be a week, but it'll hit her,
It'll right. It'll
And she says, "But she was so calm." I was like,
so calm.
yeah, but that's easier than the people that are screaming that you can't get any information." Yeah, and the types of calls that we get, and I know you and Kacey have touched on it, and I don't remember if Dr. Meredith did or not, but the calls that'll get to you are the ones that you're not expecting to get to you. Those are the ones
Right.
that'll trip something, in your head. It's almost like it lit a fuse, and all of a sudden, whatever it was actually bothering you is right here,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't get rid of it. You can't go
Right.
home. You can't. You're stuck.
Right. It's like
And
that. And I can't remember if it was Dr. Meredith or if it was Michael Segru, but one of them was, and maybe both of them at some point, but we're talking about trauma stacking, right? And like, yeah, if you don't have tools to get rid of it, right, it just stacks there. And then something seemingly benign happens. Yeah, or something major could happen, right? But sometimes it is just something totally innocuous.
yeah, and I've had a couple of ride-alongs that have, said, "Well, how do you do that? How do you go from whatever it was to whatever it was?" And I said, "You have to stick it in a box and put it away and come back to it later."
Right.
And he says, "Well, how do you do it?" And I said, "Me personally?" And he said, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't know.
Right.
Just do it. You don't have time to think about anything. You just have to do
Right.
it. And if
You
you do
just
need time to
do.
think about it, this probably isn't the job for you."
Like Matt said, trust your gut, but I think that trusting your gut and also having that little learn what you can about how people do things
Mhm.
because that will help you so much.
Matt sent me a couple of text messages. If I could give advice, try to ask your potential coworkers what they like and don't like about the job. Don't be afraid to discuss pay to see if everyone's being treated fairly or not. Being able to multitask is a godsend. Be able to compartmentalize and ask for help when you need it. Try to have fun when you can. Those are long days and nights. And while not the official line from my administration, just remember you can't know where the line is if you don't cross it once or twice. He's right,
Yes.
but he is right that
He is right, and I think too, like just talking to your coworkers, whether you really like them or not, and knowing that stuff, because I think that makes a huge difference. We named the podcast 911 Delta because when Kacey and I started it and we had all worked on D shift. That was our favorite shift to work on together.
Mhm.
We all knew who liked doing what, who was good at what. And so it was a symbiotic relationship. And we didn't all hang out outside of work. A few of us did, not all of us. We knew those things, and we would talk about anything. I mean, stuff probably. I mean, we would make jokes about, oh, now we're going to be sensitivity training because there's probably a microphone in here somewhere that's going to give us away.
Yeah.
But or
And
cultural diversity class.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough to get on a shift like that, and when I stepped down as a supervisor and I went to Elena's shift after all the shifting and everything was over with, the moving and the this and the that, and you know how it is.
Right.
We had one of those shifts where we all hung out together after work. We did stuff together. We really clicked.
Right.
And some of us who had been there a while just were waiting for the other shoe to drop for us to get broken up, and
Right.
and we would literally talk about anything. You need that. You need to be able to do that, and you need to know who you can trust. You need to remember it's a stressful job, but most of it's not stressful.
Yes. About crossing the line.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a fan of it's better to ask for forgiveness.
Me too.
Especially on the fire radio.
I told
What?
people I was training, if you don't get one complaint, you're not doing
Right.
your job.
You're not doing
And
your job.
I also
Right.
told them that if they trust you out there,
Yes.
they're
Then they
not
don't
going to complain. They might call in and
Right.
say, "Why did you do it that way?"
Right.
But if you can verbalize it, it makes sense. It sounds like
Right.
you know what you're talking about. It's going to be fun,
Right. Right.
because
Yeah.
there's just times that either cat's going to crash or something weird's going to happen, and it's going to be, well, let's see, who do I want to send?
Right. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody go.
Oh my God. And right, whether you have AVL or not, know your damn first two areas. I don't care what anybody says.
Right. Matt
Yeah.
just texted me again, and he said, anyone who can safely say Babe Boy School or Road on the radio is doing pretty well. He used to get tongue tied on that.
Babe Boy Schooler Road.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I used to get tongue tied on, what was it, Balls Bluff and Big Bertha Boulevard.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes. And he missed all the fun with Miss Daisy. Because I'm telling you what, that girl can come up with some words you never heard of before. And you're like,
Kacey could too.
what the?
We
Oh
were
my
on
God.
the same shift for years. She could come up with some stuff, and we'd look at her and go, "What did you just say?"
What did you do that?
Oh, Kacey. She and her crazy antics will be back with us soon enough. But a big thank you to Lorri and Matt for hanging out with me on the podcast this week. Next week, we'll be back at it again. So until then, bye.